What's up, guys? Welcome to Guys at Magic. This is going to be your host of the day. My name is David, and my co-host here, Hunter. Hunter, say hi.
What up?
All right, so today we're going to be talking about the $100 upgrade for the Cabaretti Cacophony deck. So Hunter has taken $100 at this deck. Going to go ahead and throw at it, see what kind of improvements we can do. So let's go ahead and start off. There are two legendary creatures designed to be the helm of this deck. Hunter, do you want to go ahead and talk about the two creatures and then which one you decided to go with?
Yeah, so as we all know by now, these commanders from Streets of New Capenna are tricolored. So, I mean, there is an extra, just two-colored legendary creature, but that's not, obviously, that can't helm the deck if there's three colors in the deck. So the two that can helm the deck is Kitt Kanto, the Face Commander, and Fabian. So let's just go over one of and then the other. So the first one is Kitt Kanto, Mayhem Diva. She is a red, a green, and a white for a 3/3 legendary creature, Cat Bard Druid. It says when Kitt Kanto enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. At the beginning of combat, on each player's turn, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control. When you do, target creature that player controls gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Goad that creature. Now, we've already done your upgrade, David, and you've done the Beamtown Bully, so you are very familiar with the goad mechanic.
A lot of gold in this set, or at least in this commander product, it seems.
Definitely. And that's one of the directions that this is kind of taking this deck is make a bunch of creatures, go wide, and then please don't touch me. The other kind of sub thing of this deck was with Fabian, Boss's Confidant. Fabian, Boss's Confidant is 3, a red, a green, and a white for a 3/6 legendary creature, Cat Advisor. It says creature tokens you control have haste, and it also has parley. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each land card revealed this way, you create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Then, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn for each non-land card revealed this way. Then, each player draws a card. So as you see with Fabian, it's kind of more of a group hug. Like Kitt Kanto's Don't Touch Me, Fabian's more group hug. And I wanted to go in the sense of please don't touch me because I'm not a fan of group hug. So we are going Kitt Kanto, Mayhem Diva as the helm of this deck.
Sounds good. That last line on Fabian, then each player draws a card. As soon as you said that, I kind of figured you'd be going with Kitt Kanto.
Yeah, like I said, I have never once done the whole group hug thing. I just don't like helping my opponents.
All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about how you're going to go about hurting your opponents. What kind of cards are you going to be throwing into the deck?
Yeah, so first off, let's talk about the additions. And as this, what I like to do is I look at the core set of each commander product and specifically pick out some cards that I think would fit perfectly in the deck. And I almost feel like should have been in the deck in the original, but they're just upgrades for a reason. So these three are from the main set of Streets of New Capenna that I'm throwing in here. The first one, Halo Fountain. Halo Fountain is a mythic that costs 2 and a white. It is an artifact. It has an ability where you can pay 1 white and tap it to untap a tapped creature you control. Create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. You can pay 2 white to tap this and untap 2 tapped creatures you control to draw a card. And you can pay 5 white, tap this, untap 15 tapped creatures you control. You win the game.
I love that last mode on this card, and I feel like if you're going to push for a deck, this might be the one where you can actually be able to do that.
Exactly. Like I said, this strategy, go wide, make a whole bunch of tokens. Our commander wants to tap down our creatures. Halo Fountain wants to untap things, which is fantastic. I don't think there's a lot of cards that just want to untap stuff to do stuff, but it synergizes extremely well with Kitt Kanto. The next card is Ginny Fey, Jetmir's Second. Ginny Fey Jetmir's Second costs a red or green, a green and a green or white. For a 3/3 legendary creature elf druid, it says if you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. We're going to be making a lot of 1/1s in this deck, so making them into 2/2s or 3/1s sounds pretty good to me.
Sounds pretty solid. What else do we got?
The final card from the new set that I'm throwing in here with these other two is Rabble Rousing. Rabble Rousing is 4 and a white for an enchantment with Hideaway 5, meaning when it enters the battlefield, you can look at the top 5, exile 1 face down, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When you attack with 1 or more creatures, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Then, if you control 10 or more creatures, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So the Hideaway 5, it's cool, and making a lot of tokens, we can actually get to that 10 and play the card we found. But honestly, the main mode of this enchantment is making just more tokens. It gets out of hand very quickly.
All right. So whenever you're not tapping down to make your opponent's goad creatures, you're going to be hopefully making more tokens.
Exactly. And when you do attack with all those tokens, you're making that many non-tapped tokens. So your commander still goes off.
Sounds pretty solid. So what other ways do we have that are going to be included in the deck to make some new tokens?
Again, so yeah, we are going wide. So things that are going in this deck, we need a lot of tokens to make it go vroom. There is a lot of token doublers enchantment-wise, but this is only the $100 upgrade. So this first card out of these 3 is a Noted Procession. It is almost a $30 card. So mainly, this is taking up a lot of that space when it comes to the $100. But it is the cheapest, better than Doubling Season, better than Parallel Lives. It's just the cheapest card. Noted Procession, again, 3 and a white. It is an enchantment. It says if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. So again, we want lots of tokens.
All right, seems pretty solid.
This next card, Tendershoot Dryad. Tendershoot Dryad is 4 and a green for a 2/2 creature Dryad. It has Ascend, meaning if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. Saprolings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the city's blessing. So again, creating a token on each upkeep, not even yours, each upkeep is fantastic.
Oh yeah, Tendershoot Drag gets out of control very quickly.
Yeah. And then yeah, you go through 1 turn cycle, you made 4. So that's fantastic. Second Harvest is an instant that costs 2 and 2 green. It says for each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. So it just doubles every token you have. Seems pretty easy to put in this deck.
All right, quick doubler.
Exactly. These next 3, we need more tokens. There's just this deck had a lot of token control, but again, it had that other theme of politics, and we don't want the politic aspect. We want more tokens. So these next 3, they really help with that. The first one, Rise the Redeemed. Rise the Redeemed costs a green or white. It's a 1/1 legendary creature elf warrior. You can pay 2 with a green or white and tap it to create a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token. You can also pay 4 a green or white and a green or white. Tap it for each creature token you control. Create a token that's a copy of that creature. So very similar to Second Harvest, that second mode. You just double all your tokens if you have enough mana to do so. So if you get this on turn 1, by turn 3, you're already making some 1/1s. If you get this next card on turn 2, this is Amara, Soul of the Accord. It is a green and white for a 2/2 legendary creature elf cleric. It says whenever Amara, Soul of the Accord becomes tapped, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. So if you're using your commander and you're tapping this down to use the goad aspect, you're making another token in its place. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it seems to synergize really, really well with the commander.
Exactly. And this final one is Cemetery Protector. I just kind of threw this in because it was pretty good at what it could do, because it's got flash. It costs 2 and 2 white for a 3/4 creature human soldier. Like again, it has flash. When Cemetery Protector enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, If it shares a card type with the exiled card, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Let's say someone fetches or just plays another card that puts a land in the graveyard. If you're exiling a land, that's fantastic because you basically have landfall for tokens as long as Cemetery Protector is on the battlefield.
He was pretty solid.
Yep. And then these last three are just a couple other token generators I thought were really good and should be included. This first one, Asika's Chariot. Everybody knows what this card is. It's very popular in Standard. Asika's Chariot is 3 and a green for a 4/4 legendary artifact vehicle. It says when it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 green cat creature tokens. Whenever Asika's Chariot attacks, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. It's got a crew cost of 4. So every time this vehicle attacks in, you just make a copy of another token you got. Pretty simple. Avenger of Zendikar. This is one of the bigger mana bases, but it's 5 and 2 green for a 5/5 creature elemental. When Avengers of Zendikar enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. And landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each plant creature you control. I know you were talking about this card last time we were doing a token deck, David. Or no, we were talking about Ginny Fey and how Ginny Fey can make these 0/1s into 2/2 cats. But
Not just that. We were actually talking, I think the last time that we brought this up, about the not Jund, the Riveteer pre-constructed commander deck, which for whatever reason, Avenger of Zendikar is actually in that deck and it really doesn't synergize very much with it. So kind of find it to be an odd inclusion in that deck, whereas it's excluded in the deck that wants a bunch of tokens. I also love how you have Tindershoot Dryad in here, a card that we had mentioned earlier that cares about a lot of Saproings and makes a ton of Saprolings because that makes Avenger of Zendikar so much better.
oh, absolutely. It's the synergy with this deck is fantastic. I
Yeah.
just want to make a whole bunch of tokens and have people not attack me. As
Yeah,
long as it's not a 1v1.
I think Avenger of Zendikar, you're going to be able to make a ton of them, and then past that point, Tindershoot Dryad should be able to just hit that ascend, give you the city's blessing with all those tokens that you've been making. You're going to pump your saplings, you're going to be able to pump your plants, just do some nutty stuff with it.
Yep, you're figuring it out. And this other final card that's also got landfall. This is Emiria Angel. Emiria Angel is 2 and 2 white for a 3/3 creature angel. It's got flying. It's got landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying.
I love how it's a May. You're never going to choose not to.
You know what? I put this land in. I don't want a creature. Thank you very much.
All right, so we've talked about some of the token generators in here. What are some of the other support cards that you've included in this deck to smooth some of the other issues out?
Yeah, so one of the other issues, there wasn't too much card draw. And if there was card draw, it wasn't as good as what I'm going to add. So these next 3 cards really synergize well with what we're doing and drawing us cards. The first one, Skull Clamp. Very, very common card in EDH. Skull Clamp is 1 generic mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/-1. Whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. Equip cost of 1. So we're making a ton of 1/1s. We're making 0/1s. We're making just anything with 1 toughness. Just 1 mana to draw 2 cards, essentially. It's fantastic.
You do lose the token, but the card draw there is so powerful, it easily makes up for it.
It really is. This next one is Welcoming Vampire. Welcoming Vampire is a newer card from Crimson Vow. This is 2 and a white for a 2/3 creature vampire. It has flying. It says whenever 1 or more other creatures with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, but we're making so many tokens every turn, we should be able to draw at least 1 more card every turn. And
All right,
with
so
flying, you can tap it down as well to use your commander. It's just good.
pretty solid there. You do have a couple of ways to make tokens on opponents' turns as well. So hopefully you can get that to trigger more than just 1 turn cycle. But at a bare minimum, being able to draw at least 1 extra card per turn is pretty solid.
Exactly. And the final one, a commander only card from the new set. This is Benny Brax, Zoologist. Benny Brax, Zoologist is 3 and a white for a 3/2 legendary creature elf druid. It has Convoke, meaning your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays 1 for the mana of this creature's color. At the beginning of each end step, if you created a token this turn, draw a card. Well, why don't you look at that? We're going to be making tokens.
I love how this card doesn't just care about creature tokens either. It's any kind of token, so you can have, I don't know, treasure tokens, food tokens, clues, anything like that that's going to be coming into play. He'll be drawing you cards.
Exactly, and I think that's pretty much why this card is a little more expensive than I expected it to be. I think this card's like $13.
Probably warrants that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think people are running it as their commander.
All right, so it looks like you have 2 more cards here on your list. What are these other 2?
So these last 2, I just think they just fit perfectly in the deck. This first one, Elspeth Sun's Champion. Elspeth Sun's Champion is a Planeswalker that costs 4 and 2 white, starting loyalty of 4. It has a +1 that just says put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. That's amazing. It has a -3 that says destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater, and a -7 that says you get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have flying.
Everything about this card is on synergy.
Exactly. Like if you're in a predicament where your enemies' boards are getting huge with giant creatures and you just got a bunch of little guys, well, time to wipe the board. A +1 to make 3 tokens. That's unimaginable in this day and age of Magic, but they did it back then, so.
I mean, that basically says +1 to your Planeswalker, and then choose the big scary threat and goad it.
Exactly. It protects itself very nicely. And this other card, this final card I'm adding in here is Drum Bellower. It's a new card from the last set that was Commander only. It is 2 and a white for a 2/1 creature spirit. It has flying. It says untap all creatures you control during each other player's untap step. So you're going to be tapping down your creatures to go to other creatures. Well, just untap them on the next player's step. And do it again.
Keep doing it over and over and over again. Keep your opponents attacking each other.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked about some of the cards that you wanted to include in there. Obviously, you're building around this token theme. It sounds as if there was kind of like a group hug or politics sub theme that was in this pre-constructed deck to begin with. I'm assuming that's going to be the direction we're going to be moving in to remove those cards. So let's talk about some of the cards you've taken out of the deck.
Yeah, so I only added 17 cards. I know it doesn't seem that much, but I think the 17 we added was very important. But the 17 we are removing, these first couple 3, way too expensive. So this first one, Thunderfoot Baloth. Thunderfoot Baloth is 4 and 2 green for a 5/5 creature beast. It's got Trample with Lieutenant that says as long as you control your commander, Thunderfoot Baloth gets +2/+2, and other creatures you control get +2/+2 and have Trample. Wow, that's amazing, and we do want our commander on the field. It doesn't do anything if our commander is not on the field. So for 6 mana for a 5/5 Trampler, I think it could go. Another thing that's 6 mana is Vivian's Stampede. Costs 4 and 2 green for a sorcery. It says each creature you control gains Vigilance, Trample, and Melee until end of turn. Now, whenever a creature with melee attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attack this combat. Melee's cool, and this card also says at the beginning of your next main phase this turn, draw a card for each player who was dealt combat damage this turn. You saw the cards that we added for card draw. This is one of the ones that I was talking about where we got better with card draw. And this is only a sorcery, so it only acts 1 time. The last too expensive and for my taste card is Sandworm Convergence. Sandworm Convergence is 6 and 2 green for an enchantment. It says creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. That's a very expensive enchantment. And honestly, that first part doesn't matter too much. You're
Yeah, it
essentially paying
seems
8 mana for a 5/5 every turn. It sounds good in your head, but it's just too expensive.
It seems like with your commander in play as well, if they do have a big flying threat, you probably just going to tap down some of your tokens to goad it and send it somewhere else.
Bingo. Yeah. I want to send 8 mana elsewhere.
All right, so those are some of the more expensive cards. I completely agree with you on that. I'm actually not a huge fan of having really high mana values. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the other cards that you're going to be cutting from this list.
Yeah. So again, no hugs here. I do not want to help my opponent. So these 3 cards I'm getting rid of because I don't want to help my opponent. First one, Sylvan Offering. Sylvan Offering is X and a green for a sorcery. It says choose an opponent. You and that player each create an XX green treefolk creature token. Choose an opponent. You and that player each create X 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. Well, that's fantastic, and we can essentially make a ton of tokens. We don't want to give an opponent that many as well.
Yeah, it
No thanks.
seems like you would kind of shut off your ability for you to kind of get some attacks in if your opponent is left with a ton of blockers.
Yeah, especially if there's like that one-on-one left and you have this card in your hand. I'm never casting it. Another one we're getting rid of is the other commander we talked about, Fabian Boss's Confidant. I don't really need to go over this card again, but you know what it does. You're giving other players card draw. No thanks. This last card in these 3 is Life of the Party. Well, Life of the Party is 3 and a red. It is a newer card. It is a creature elemental. It is a 0/1. Got first strike, trample, and haste. It says whenever Life of the Party attacks, it gets X+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. When Life of the Party enters the battlefield, if it's not a token, each opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. So you're giving this card to all your opponents. I don't want that.
You don't want to help out your opponents under any circumstances, do you, Hunter?
I really, really don't. We're not here to make friends. We're here to win. And that moves on to this next 3 because, again, we're still not here to help other people. This first card, Orzhov Advocist. Orzhov Advocist is 2 and a white for a 1/4 creature human advisor. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2+1/+1 counters on creatures they control. If a player does, creatures that player controls can't attack you or planeswalkers you control until your next turn. Awesome. They can't attack you for 1 turn, but guess what? They have a 2/1/1 counters on a creature that can attack you next turn. Don't want it. Speaking of something we don't want, Agitator Ant. Agitator Ant is 2 and a red for a 2/2 creature insect. At the beginning of your end step, each player may put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Goad each creature that had counters on it this way. Again,
You're just 100% not here for any kind of love. Um, Out of curiosity, just because of the commander having that goad ability, do you think this might be a little bit too redundant in you trying to get your opponents to swing their creatures in opposite directions?
exactly. I mean, I think our commander already does the goat thing. This card does the goat thing and gives them counters. So I just don't want to give them count. I just don't want to. No. I
All right,
don't need
sounds
it.
good.
I'd rather them attack an opponent that has a bigger creature and then kill the threat, you know? I don't know. Force an attack where the creature's gonna die. The final card is Selvala Explorer Returned. Selvala Explorer Returned is 1, a green and a white for a 2/4 legendary creature elf scout. It has Parley. You can tap this. Each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, add a green, and you gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card. Once again, I don't want to give card draw to my opponents.
I love how I can see this card making your list, except for whenever that last line comes in and you just like, I don't know, you get that pit in your stomach and just like absolutely under no circumstances can I take this anymore.
Exactly, dude. Like, I just don't understand why they need to add that text. It's like, oh, each player draws a card. It's like, this is a great little ability, but we're just going to give everybody card draw.
Well, it's so that you just don't know what they're going to keep drawing. I get it, but I understand why you cut the card as well.
Yeah.
All right, so what other kind of cards are making the cut?
Well, some of them I just don't like. I just don't like them in the deck. And one of them is Bess Soul Nourisher. Bess Soul Nourisher is a green and a white for a 1/1 legendary creature human citizen. It says whenever one or more other creatures with base power and toughness 1/1 enter the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Bess Soul Nourisher. Whenever Bess attacks, each other creature you control with base power and toughness 1/1 gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Bess. While we are making a lot of 1/1s, it is super specific. So it doesn't do anything else to our 0/1s, our 2/2s. We have other tokens. They're not just 1/1s. It's just too narrow for me. Another one is Sizzling Soloist. Sizzling Soloist is 3 and a red for a 3/2 creature human citizen. It has Alliance. It says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent controls can't block this turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, that creature attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. That is not a may. That is a must. So I would rather, by the odd chance that I don't have enough tokens on the field or I don't have my commander to goad it in the wrong direction, I would assume that opponent might just swing it at you. I don't want that.
At least on the bright side, Sizzling Soloist is always there to be a blocker.
He can be a blocker, but no. I don't want that ability. It's weird. If it said may, you may have it attack like maybe a little better, but I don't know. That it's just a must. The last card that I don't like in this category is Outpost Siege. Outpost Siege is 3 and a red. It's an enchantment. As Outpost Siege enters the battlefield, choose cons or dragons. If you choose cons at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of next turn, you may play that card. If you chose dragons, whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to any target. Most of the time, people pick cons in this card. I've seen this card played multiple times. But we already have some pretty good card draw. I mean, this is a pseudo card draw, but our other card draw we're adding is just better.
Primarily red player saying you get rid of Outpost Siege kind of makes me cry on the inside.
I know. That's what I kind of made the reference. If I've seen this card played before, is you. You play this card all the time.
All right, so we got a couple more cuts to go through. What are these last ones?
Yeah, so the last ones, this is False Floor. False Floor is 4 generic mana for an artifact. It enters the battlefield tapped. Creatures enter the battlefield tapped. It's got an ability where you can pay 2 and tap it. Exile this. Exile all untapped creatures. Activate only as a sorcery. This does not synergize well with our commander at all. We want our stuff to be untapped so we can tap. Having our tokens come in tapped is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
This card reads really odd to me. So your creatures obviously are going to continuously be tapped down, and so long as your commander is in play, you can force them to tap as well. So I can see how this would potentially be a board wipe that you get to profit from, but your opponent's creatures are also entering the battlefield tapped, so they're new things. They're going to get dodged. That's kind of odd.
Yeah, you can only activate it as a sorcery too. So, you know, can't even do it in response to anything. It's one of the worst cards I've seen in a while. Yeah, that's the one. Magus of the Wheel. Magus of the Wheel is 2 and a red for a 3/3 creature human wizard. You can pay a 1 and a red, tap this, sacrifice Magus of the Wheel. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. We're not really here to do this kind of effect. I know you love this card, David.
I feel like you're targeting me by removing this and Outpost Siege.
I know you play this card all the time, but I don't have any effects where card draw does anything. So just giving your opponent a new hand, it's not my favorite thing to do. I know you're getting yourself a new hand, but I don't want it. And the final card here in this category is Seize the Spotlight. Seize the Spotlight is 2 and a red for a sorcery. It says each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. For each player who chose Fame, gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, and they gain haste until end of turn. For each player who chose Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. I just think most of the time, if your opponent has something tiny, they're going to give you the little tiny creature. I don't know. I think the other cards we added are better than this card.
Yeah, I'm not typically the biggest fan of cards that give your opponents choices either, unless both choices are really just kind of a loss for them.
Yeah, it's again, it's that kind of like there's a sub politics theme in this deck. I just don't want that card. Speaking of things that are not needed, the last 2 cards I'm getting rid of are just a couple of equipments. I just don't think are really needed in our deck because I don't know, we just don't need them. So the first one is Scepter of Celebration. Scepter of Celebration is 2 and a green. Artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Equip cost of 3. Yes, it does make citizen creature tokens. But the stipulation is that you need to equip it to a creature, and that creature needs to do damage. So the other token generators that we've added to the deck are infinitely better than this. The other one is Bloodthirsty Blade. Bloodthirsty Blade is 2 generic mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goaded. You can pay 1 to attach Bloodthirsty Blade to target creature and opponent controls. Activate only as a sorcery. So again, you can just give an equipment to a creature to goad it, and it will always attack. I mean, it's cool. I get it. It's on theme with the goad of our commander. But I just felt like we needed room, and Skull Clamp is going to fit nicely in this better.
Totally understandable. So those are going to be the cuts. So at this point, we've talked about kind of all the deck alterations that we're going to be making to this Precon. Out of curiosity, whenever you were going through this, what would you say some of the strengths of this deck are?
The strength, believe it or not, the reason you don't really see any land removal is I do think the lands are pretty strong. They do have 38 lands in this deck, and some of them actually create tokens, which I was surprised because the one thing I wanted to do, I was like, I got to get some of those lands that create tokens, and I looked through and I was like, oh, you got Castle Arvindale that makes humans. That's pretty cool. And then you got other things that make creatures. So I was like, all right, I don't need to change too much. They have 2 color lands. They've got tricolor lands. The land base is really good. So one of those is a strength. They've got a couple good board wipes. I think is a pretty good strength too. That deal damage to non-tokens, stuff like that. And they actually have this new card, Grand Crescendo, which is a $20 card. It's brand new. I'll throw it up on screen. But it is X and 2 white for an instant, where you just create X 1/1 green and white creature citizen tokens. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn.
Sounds pretty
So
solid.
you're just making X 1/1s and everything's indestructible.
So we talked about what those strengths were. What about some of the weaknesses of this deck? Where do you think that this deck may have a hard time?
Well, I think one of the weaknesses is recovery. It could be hard to recover it from board wipes if your board is in a really good spot. But then again, board wipes sometimes it's really hard to recover regardless. But if something like Farewell comes in and just wipes your board, this deck will have a little struggles to recover.
All right. And then I know that we do these upgrade videos for just about every Precon that comes out. Obviously, not all of them can be our favorites. Would you recommend picking up this deck and making these alterations, or is this a deck that you think may actually be one you want to just kind of skip?
Well, if you're looking at picking up this deck, I would do these upgrades. It seems when I was building this deck, I was like, this is a lot of fun. And then I got to the point where I was like, oh man, the token theme has obviously been done thousands of times before. It's nothing new to Naya, and I think it was kind of a cop out for Wizards to make another Naya token deck. So it is some of the cards to get tokens is a bit more expensive. So if you want to pick up this specific deck, I know it is a little different with Goated. I am the Naya player, as you know. Would I personally pick up this deck? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe when we get to the $300 upgrade, we'll talk about it more. But as of right now, I don't have an answer onto whether or not it is good enough to pick up.
All right, so maybe a little bit of a skewed perception once you throw a little bit more at it. Okay, sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my total, if you add all those cards, got just under $100. It was 98.56.
All right, so just under that $100 cutoff. All right. Well, thank you so much for sticking around throughout this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, make sure that you comment down below and make sure that you remind Hunter that he is wrong and why it is he should not remove Outpost Siege and Magus of the Wheel. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter at GuysThatMagic. And if you're curious about all this, about the deck and all of its changes, you can check us out on Maxfield as well. We'll have the link for that down in the description below. All right. Take it easy, everybody.
Bye.